scenario for them. It doesn't matter. Again, 3-1, 3-2, it does not matter because that plus-minus record there, even if they go 3-2, Heroes Hearth, even if they 3-0, there's not enough catching up.
There's just not enough. Taking a look at a kind of closer look, dissecting the top half of those standings for anybody who hasn't done the math themselves, looking at that win-loss. That is why Tempo Storm, even though they've match record been at the top of North America, that's why everybody's looked at it and it's been like, how do you take them out? How can you even get close to it? Because when this team is winning, they aren't just winning 3-2s, right? They're winning 3-0s very, very consistently. And, it's going to be interesting to see what both teams, what their perspectives were beforehand. And lucky enough, we were able to sit down Cattle and Fury and hear some of their thoughts about this, what could be very tense matchup for the teams.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing against Tempo Storm because our series against them means a lot to them. If they end up taking the series over us, they secure their first seed going to Midseason Brawl, and they don't have to go through the playoffs. Where for us, it's not the end of the world if we lose, but it's good motivation for the team if we take that win. Playing against Tempo Storm, it will be exciting and fun just because I used to play on a team with them not too long ago. So this weekend, it'll be a lot of fun to see where everyone's at, how much have they improved without me with their new roster, and how much have I improved with my new roster, and we're just gonna go head to head to see just how everyone's doing.
I'm excited to play against Michael. I think he's getting really good at shot calling, so I'm excited to have that matchup happen. First seed is really important to us, I would say. We want to show that we are the #1 NA team. We want to stay first seed. We want to lock in that spot. We want to have more time to prepare for mid-season and more time to just plan out what we want to do and just be able to kind of take a little break too and just have that extra window and flexibility. So we feel pretty good. Even though at this point we definitely would have liked to have qualified. We had a slight slip up the last couple of weeks, but we're still in a good spot mentally, and we still think we're definitely the favored team to be the first seed, and we should be able to take this series.
Pretty interesting to hear, from Fury, as this is kind of that benchmark, because the successes that they had against Tempo Storm, the last time they were able to play with that major kind of, everybody sitting there going what's going on with Tempo Storm? But then also, I feel like when you look at all the roster changes in North America, that's the one that's the easiest overlooked, right? Fury is the man that used to be a part of the Tempo Storm roster, and now he's still, again, kind of outperforming. Even when Gale seems to struggle, he is still the man on the front line making huge plays. But this is the moment to kind of check in and be like, how have things gone? Because the other teams that were able to check in with Tempo Storm, I feel like Heroes Hearth did that exact same thing. When they double-checked, they came back out on top.
Well, the man that replaced him was already on that roster. That was Caterpillar. He's also kind of their primary shot caller, does a lot of what they do. Obviously saw him. It's kind of like a group effort with what they got there. Cattle talked about the matchup potentially against Michael Udall, but he needs to look towards that front line. When we saw him against that Heroes Hearth series, it was Johanna, Varian. Those are not necessarily the top of the meta ones. When you look on the other side for Fury, he loves to play Garrosh. He loves to play ETC. He can play a mean Johanna and a Tyrael around that, and you start to dive down. If you are Cattle, you could argue that everybody on Tempo Storm's roster, almost everybody, June, potentially best support here in North America, Psalm, potentially one of the best players, Fan, potentially one of the best players. I mean, all-around players. Then you start to look at that front line, you're like, is that where we might be able to have an advantage? You have Fury on there. Again, B-Kit versus Glaurung. It's going to be a fun one to watch, and I think that when you look at these teams stylistically match up, I'm really looking forward to seeing a Fury. Although they dropped 0-3 earlier in the year, can Fury get his revenge?
I think it was a great point. Not only the front line, but I think the off lanes for me has got to be something between the teams, because I feel like without a doubt the biggest weakness, or when the team is highs and lows from both teams, is when Glaurung or B-Kid is really outperforming themselves. So what is going to come online? First, we got to figure out where we're going for game number 1. Battleground is in fact going to be, to no surprise, Gale Force Esports sticking to their priority on Tomb of the Spider Queen, but bans coming in. We see them rid of Shrines and Battlefield of Eternity taken off the table for Tempo Storm. Not a mix-up in the books here for either team when it comes to bans or map priority.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Again, the amount of people that let Dragonshire through, I believe Heroes Hearth was the one that first gave the loss to to Tempo Storm on Dragonshire. They had been undefeated on that, but now, obviously, the smaller battleground of Tomb of the Spider Queen coming out here. And really, when it comes down to first pick, I really want to see, will we see Tempo Storm play around the Medivh Maiev? The Medivh, despite the individual performance on Medivh, you could debate how well that's done. But team-wise, Dreadnought, it has not looked well. It's not that Fan is the bad Medivh. Obviously, we've known Psalm to be there, but it's the draft around it, and that's always when they've struggled. They would love Maiev. Maiev is a terror on this battleground, but if they're going to play around that as first pick, I'm curious, are they going to be willing to play around that and then be willing to take the Medivh if it's there?
And on that same note, I'm just going to flat out raves and say this, that Psalm is hands down the better Medivh, or Maiev, excuse me, out of the two playing in this. Mike Udall has shown higher priority into the Maiev, doesn't pack the same punch as some of our Maiev players, and I feel like Psalm is on that tier of like, I feel like we have kind of like all of Maiev players and then like three and their own tier, right? Arthlon's another one that kind of falls in that department. I think, what am I thinking of? Freedom. Excuse me, Kira, yeah. It was another one who's had those outstanding Maiev plays. So immediately, if that priority at the top half of the draft is still going to be there for Gale Force, I'm suddenly going like, it's not going to hold the same weight over to Tempo. So they have to find a way around that Maiev Medivh conundrum. I always just synergize them and just throw them together, make it the Maiev.
They share most of the same letters. It's forgivable. Yeah, again, the whole thing there is Medivh is great on this battleground. We've seen it. Several teams have used that. But what we've seen from Europe a little bit is they've actually...
Wait, you watch other regions play this game?
Crazily enough,
That's
I do.
weird.
I know, right? But it's how I wake up in the morning. I literally roll over, turn on my tablet, and I probably lay there for something like 20 minutes and watch it. But either way, we get a lower priority on Medivh there, depending on the team and depending on the map and stuff like that. Maiev has been rising in priority. We here in North America have heavily prioritized the Maiev even after all the nerfs, still showing the strength has been there. Medivh, however, has been more flexible, as was Maiev just as short as a week or two ago. So I wonder if you're going to play around Tomb of the Spider Queen, things that you have to look out for. We see a lot of Jaina play, in particular, from that of Gale Force, especially on this battleground. So I think there's a lot of things to consider draft coming in.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There has been a huge fluctuation in priority onto that Jaina. And another one that showed up for Gale Force and then kind of disappeared, and I brought it up last week, was that Junkrat. That was there whenever we saw them able to get the upset 3 weeks ago, but then now they're in a position to where it's just kind of been, a miss here for Gale Force Esports. We'll see if it shows up. A Tempo Storm not wanting to deal with Fury on the Garrosh. Start out the first bans. Both Medivh and Maiev led through. Tempo Storm, what do you take, Maiev or the Medivh? I'll be honest, I think I'd take the Maiev.
I think Maiev for sure, and I really wonder with Gale Force if that is a direct call out towards Glaurung, and if we get a Blaze in that first 2 picks on the side of Gale Force, that is a major call out. You could go the Medivh and the Blaze. You haven't really showed a lot. You have a lot of defensive opportunities. Maiev is going to be there. Maiev, though, you come through that portal, maybe you're met there with a couple of tethers. We're going to find out, but the Maiev is the first pickup. Gale Force, I feel like Blaze has got to be here, Dreadnought.
I think so as well. With the Dahaka banned out, you know that. Who was it that first exposed the kind of weakness within the hero pool? Was it LFM? Who was it? Against Tempo. Team 12 was the first one to push it. Okay, so Team 12 is the first one to push it. We've not seen too many teams like Heroes Heart that not force too heavily. A little bit of priority, but not too much. So I can definitely see Gale Force looking at that and going, that's our reliability. We have to look towards, Glaurung off in the off lane. I just don't know. They're going to commit to it this high up, and that Jaina you were talking about. I didn't think we would see it paired with the Jaina this highly committed.
I think they're afraid to give it up. They're not just are they afraid to get up, but afraid to get it banned from them. They've had a high priority towards Jaina. Now, the other thing to keep in mind here is Medivh, right? Medivh might not show up in this draft at all. It might come out as a ban against Tempo Storm. For Gale Force, both Michael Udall and Big E can play Jaina. It's been a mixed bag of who plays it. But for Medivh, you're not going to run a Psalm on Maiev and a Fan on Medivh. You could flex Glaurung over onto Medivh, but who's going to be your offlaner? Where does your damage come from? Where does your solo laner come from? And I think when Tempo Storm commits to a Maiev, you don't have to worry about them doubling down on a Medivh.
And I would even raise to that point, even though it is probably one of the most profound eras of Medivh that North America has ever felt with Glaurung moving over to that, we also have to raise the fact that Glaurung's Medivh hasn't had much success outside of the Diablo Wombo combo era. Let's be real here. Like, we have not actually seen many cases where we see it used, played, and successful. Now he's on a different role, so it's like hard to be able to make that argument like we aren't going to see it anymore. I'm just trying to say that even during that moment, we never really saw it without that heavy synergy. Tempo Storm still going to commit to the high Uther value that we've seen out of them as a team?
Sonya. if you're targeting that solo lane, unless you feel that you can counter that Sonya, maybe they go with Johanna to deal with that. You get the mini stun on Sonya's Whirlwind.
But there's a new math problem kind of up on the block, I feel like, when it comes to that off lane that we aren't considering too much, or we haven't seen too much in North America, but I think is going to be a bit more prominent, and that's also Thrall off in the off lane. Whenever you're dealing with a Blaze specifically in the off lane, if you just need somebody who's a placeholder, pretty good skirmishing, and there isn't too much kill potential within the 4-man, always get yourself a nice Thrall, can hold his own in the skirmish, can accent the team fights pretty well. I'm not saying that Tempo has to commit to it, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is the series where North America finally sees those Thralls coming out, especially for Glorong. I mean, let's be real here. Melee Assassins are without a doubt his better, compared to those off-lane warriors.
Yeah, and when it comes to, I'm surprised at the Phoenix ban.
Just because the Jaina picked up on their end, if anything, you could make that argument. You'd expect them to pick it up. I would say that's with
Hanzo, they're already picked up. Who's their Phoenix player?
That's a good call too, as well. Makes it a little bit more curious.
Like there's Fan likely to be the Hanzo, Psalm, the Maiev, legend at this point in the early making. Still, making plays nonstop unless there's been something different in scrims. Maybe Glaurung's on a different hero. Maiev technically is a melee assassin, so.
Sorry, took a little bit to get my notes down there.
The whole thing with a Medivh Jaina, I'm actually not a huge fan of that. I understand there's obvious synergies with any Medivh composition, but when you run this, essentially you're running double mage. Double mage, you lack sustain and you lack a lot of that. Junkrat, you mentioned, could be here. It gives you a little bit of sustain, gives you a lot of poke and a lot of wave clear, but I really like to see if they want to go down the gray main route. It's very difficult to do a Maiev Uther.
They don't go either yet.
They're going to hold it.
Hold it off here. Only commit to the Diablo. A little bit of kill potential within the 4, but is pretty vulnerable to Maiev with the combos. Interesting composition so far here from both teams.
This is the one battleground that Johanna has her highest win rate by far compared to everything else. Coming in, she sits somewhere, especially in North America. You look at it, it's 33% globally, 34.5%, 35% coming into this weekend. But when you look at Tomb of the Spider Queen, it's getting closer to 50%, which means all other battlegrounds she's struggling on. This is the one where we've seen Tempo have a high priority on Johanna, dealing with the Diablo potential. See if they got something else up their sleeve, though.
Yeah, if they go with the Johanna, it just doesn't work too well with the Maiev kill potential within the 4. It does well with Hanzo, but there's no offlaner to really synergize with it, and no damage dealer left other than that Junk, which doesn't fulfill the offlane role desired. To be honest with you, I don't really like it. They commit to that Malthael, and then they go with the Tyrael instead. I like this decision-making a lot more. Also provides a lot of kill potential there. I will say the Malthael, though.
It's been a while.
It's been a hot minute since we've seen him here in North America.
Again, North America has had the highest priority on that going into, a lot. It's fallen off a lot. 70 games sitting at a 60% win rate in North America. When you look globally, North America has about half the games, 47, almost 48% combined between Korea, Europe, and North America, which means North America's had a lot of success and they've played it a lot. We'll see the return of Malthael here adds up.
Backliner for Gale Force. Normally in this situation, you'd say that's where the Phoenix comes online. Lunara as the last pickup here.
Gonna see if you can, the Lunara. Again, I think her niche is really small. Obviously, going against Uther, that's a natural one. Level 7, Splintered Spear, spreading out that poison. I'm not sure if this is the position that I would expect to see her in. You have a Tyrael, you have a Malthael that could potentially get on you. Dragon Arrow set a lot of that up. You're in a lot of trouble at that point. Thornwood Vines, I think, is good because it's Tomb of the Spider Queen. You can spread out some of that damage. If you can kind of slow them down, pepper them around. I mean, you obviously have unfair advantage at level 13 against slow targets, Jaina. There's a lot of natural synergies there, so there's a lot that you can potentially do here with this draft. Lunara and Jaina, a little bit more susceptible to the dive, though.
Yeah, I just look at this and I go, Gale Force, you're obviously putting a lot into this series, right? You want to make a splash in this very last weekend and maybe make Tempo Storm fall out of their throne. You get the draft with the pressure onto the offlane. You get the Blaze, the upper hand there. You've got kill potential within the Jaina. And then the last pick where you weren't even bullied that much, maybe even banned yourself out a little bit. Still didn't have to, but commit to the risk of the Lunara. It's going to be a bold one here. Gale Force Esports put a lot of pressure on whoever's on that Dryad. We'll see if we have what it takes here So we do, in fact, have game number 1 between Tempo Storm and Gale Force Esports.
Lunara, hit or miss. See how it plays out here. It's going to be Gale Force Esports here on the left in blue, and we're going to see if they can maybe take it home and put that L on Tempo's record, as it will be Biggie on that Lunara. See how well he does. Michael Udall, of course, he'll be on the Jaina. Interchangeable there. B-Kid on that off lane. He's going to be on the Blaze. Fury on that front line. We'll see how he stacks up. Diablo does well on this battleground. Then Akape's rounding it out here on the Rhaegar.
And in the red is Tempo Storm, still sitting at the top of North America. We're going to have Glarong on the off lane playing, the Malthael. Glarong is not playing Glarong. Caterpillar on the front line here for Tempo Storm, going to be playing Tyrael. We have Psalm on his Maiev, one of the best Maievs in North America. Fan going to be playing Hanzo. And last up, June, supporting the team as Uther.
You know, Diablo, as he gets stacked up, Psalm already going in, trying to make the plays. He's going to get the tether on to Fury, but there's going to be an instant charge in. We're trading off kills. Malthael and Diablo both fall. I mean, you get a little bit more stacked as a Diablo. You probably live there, but that is a level 1 Diablo with virtually no souls. He's a little bit squishier.
It's going to be really interesting to keep focus on what happens with that offlane. The fact that Glarong was the first person to die on the side of Tempo Storm set them back a little bit, going to create a lack of pressure within the 4-man. Just because Maiev has to go kind of soak into the wave of Blaze. But the biggest question is about Jaina, because she does have the kill potential to kind of roam down to the bottom half of the map. Whether or not Gale Force sticks with the standard 1-4 that you normally wouldn't want to kind of cater towards, and because Malthael is such a vulnerable offlaner, right? He's one of the most susceptible towards those Jaina ganks. It's just one of those things that I've expected to see a little bit more out of North America in general when looking at the entirety of part number 2, but this compositionally, it seems like it demands that from Gale Force, and I want to see them kind of act on it.
There's the dive in. That's one way to make sure the tether doesn't get you as far as flip them over and throw them right back onto your side. Force them on the retreat. And you can see holding position there. Fury, heads up play. Again, I look for a lot of playmaking on the front line of Fury there. Cattle, you know, it's been a while since we've seen a lot of Tyrael play. Tyrael, for him, I feel has been one of his better heroes. And now, obviously, them going into the Malthael can complement that dive. So I really like where we see Tempo Storm here in this game number 1.
Do you think we're going to see the Last Rites or the Tormented Souls?
You know, it's an interesting point because of the Rhaegar. Rhaegar can only save one person. Last Rites generally is targeting one person. You have Bunker that you can also fall back into. So there's a lot of fail-safes on the side of Gale Force if there is that Last Rites. Tormented Souls does require you to get on there, but it also leaves you in a vulnerable position because the minute that Sanctification wears off, you have a Jaina, you have a Lunara, a lot of potential damage coming out of there. So, you know, there's a lot to consider, I think, when we do get to that level 10.
I hope we get Tormented Souls. I've been sad with how little Tormented Souls we have gotten. Granted, a lot of that has been with the rise of Malthael with the response to the Garrosh. You know, there has been some adjustments into the Last Rites and also some nerfs on towards that Tormented Souls, but I always just enjoy the kind of preparation towards the damage. Granted, when you have a hybrid mage like a Hanzo, it's not necessarily the easiest to set up, but the Maiev, she easily can lock down a lot of those kills, keep them in place. We'll figure it out as we round out those heroics, but for now, Tempo able to turn in 30 gems for themselves, kind of put them on reserve with those baby turn-ins.
I'd say the turn-ins have helped a lot, and they actually accomplished quite a bit off of that. You can see Psalm going in, trying to make another play here, but the fact that they were able to get down a full tower and then potentially a second one, which will be easy to fall, if they do get that turn-in point around that vaunted 5.5 minute, 7.5 to level 8, that could be a very terrifying position for Gale Force to find themselves in. So we'll see if they can get that turn-in, as they've already worked their way towards that and denied a lot of Gale Force their potential turn-ins.
Yeah, Gale Force is not even, you know, with only 3 gems turned in, and the fact that there's been 35 on the other side, I mean, it's not that big of a setback because, as you said, we've seen teams, you know, get that turn in, hold on to the gems, and even get a rebuttal turn in later. But it's definitely shows, it's a pretty good indicator of how dominant you've been in the laning situation. If you can't get any of those gems turned in, it means you are the ones kind of falling behind for the most part. And Tempo Storm, it's not like their composition should be bragging about their wave clears, just showing that their rotations are very crisp and clean.
They have to deny it. And this is something that you noted last week, Dreadnought. You actually saw Glaurung disappear at the top part of your map, making that rotation. They knew they were trying to keep an eye on that turn, and he is the key to getting the first Web Weaver turn in. Gale Force does do a good job of sniffing that out, using the Wisp and other vision tools that they had available to them. You can see Tempo Storm very active in their rotations, controlling a lot of the pacing here and still getting a lot of turn-ins. However, Gale Force did finally get quite a few out of their bag, and they've got 38 turned in for themselves.
Yeah, that little rotation is something that really only Heroes Hearth Esports has kind of been willing to do on a map like Tomb for some time. able to flex it up, moving towards top, but Gale Force had a proper response, committing enough people towards the bottom half of the map, but also contributing towards the top half. Cattle not going to move in for that interrupt, leaving the Webweaver phase over to Gale Force Esports, but it comes at the cost of a Jaina. Jaina will be here kind of in time for the Webweaver phase, but Tempo Storm's got to be thankful that they gained themselves a huge window right before these Webweavers come online.
It scares me because a lot of gems were dropped. Sometimes you can play the patient game and then get that double up turn in because you control the lanes after the turn in. However, Tempo Storm's still a half level up. They're going to have significant amount of clear here before Jaina gets back, and this spawning so far back in the mid lane, Tempo Storm, Dreadnought, is in a position that if they can clear this quickly and then get a turn in, they will hit that 10 tier spike and have a significant advantage going from here on out.
The rotation for Gale Force now down towards bottom. After that middle Webweaver took a bit of free damage. You are going to be able to at least take out the front wall here for free, but that is about all it's going to gain as the top and middle Webweaver has already been dealt with by Tempo Storm.
The experience is definitely spiked back in favor of Gale Force. Again, I worry about when we get through this, although the lack of response here in the bottom lane is a bit surprising as 3 members are still here with a Webweaver. That's a decent chunk of experience if they do end up getting this fort down. Gale Force, they're looking to finally retreat. Fan coming in on the Hanzo. Maiev starting to filter in as well. Not able to get the fort down on the side of Gale Force.
Gale Force, though, honestly, I feel like because that lack of rotation within time, thanks to a little bit of pressure applied by the 2-man on the top half of the map, they've got to be very happy with how much they made happen in that Webweaver phase, considering it to be the first. And again, the rotations that Tempo Storm had, it started out very good for Tempo Storm, but just a little bit too much committed to the top half. And now Gale Force, at least a bit of breathing room.
They wanted that tower. They want this minion wave. That will give them 10. You can see the Knights were picked up on the side of Tempo Storm. They weren't able to defend quick enough, and that is due to a little bit of lack of wave clear. So, as you said, Gale Force in a very fortunate position. It is going to be Thornwood Vines, as well as that Water Elemental. A lot of control, but you lack that survivability option if you do get dove upon. So we'll see exactly how big he does in these scenarios, or whether the poison damage forces the hand of Tempo Storm because they have that Uther on their side.
Fury moving up to get the interrupt, throws on the W, will end up interrupting 2. Psalm uses the shadow, but not going to follow up quite yet here. This turn-in is going to be very tense. You see the teams ridding of the camps over on mid. Gale Force just wanted the 10s and then able to get the rid of the clear. Now Welly's going to be thrown down. Last auto, interrupt to Galarong with 31 gems. Maiev goes in with the 2-man, 3-man combo. Warden's Cage locked down. Look at that ancestral healing, landing on a Mike Udall with the body blocks from Cattle. He eventually gets in the bunker, but he's going to be one-shot when he gets out of that. Jet propulsion goes in. Jaina ends up dropping, but it comes at the cost of Psalm there. Now Galarong is getting body blocked to death by Gale Force Esports, and they take the trade 2-for-1. Cattle goes in. He wants the 30 gems. He'll get it, but big impact there with that Q.
Is it enough? That's the last heal. That's the last heal. Does he have it? Does he have his W? Does not. The shield's going to be there. That is so crucial for him getting out of there. That was such an aggressive. I cannot believe he made that play, Dreadnought, because he got over. And you got to question if Fury does not get that toss there. Obviously, he's trying to get the kill, but he kind of put Cattle in a position to kind of expedite the process just a little bit because he's like, oh, you're trying for these gems. What if I kill you first? He got on those gems, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute. He disappeared. That was a great setup. It was calculated the entire time by Cattle, throwing that Eldruins out long before.
High risk play there from Cattle, and it pays off by being able to survive. But Gale Force Esports still in pretty good control here, winning when it comes to Webweaver phase number 2 of this game. They got the Knights pressuring out for them, but look at this B-Kid out a bit too far. A lot of damage there. Now Fury is going to get body blocked to death by Tempo Storm. Can anybody help him, save him, give him the heals? He's able to shove out. Bunker goes down. B-Kid now able to save the day. Do they get aggressive here? Well, he's still getting that damage out. Huge Splinter Spear damage once again from big impact there on Lunara.
Udall's got to be careful. He's playing with fire there. More importantly, he's playing with the Maiev. B-Kid very far forward. The likes of Gale Force starting to heal back up. They're going to deal with this. There's enough gems on the side of Gale Force for them to get the turn in. It looks like they're going to do that. Tempo willing to concede that. Gale Force getting close to 13. Tempo wants to deal with this night camp here. And Gale Force, Dreadnought, early advantage. I thought that they might have pulled the trigger a little bit too early, but that first push has kind of set the tone for a lot of this. But the heads-up plays from Akaface, and more importantly, B-Kid. We'll see if he gets out alive here, though.
Tempo Storm really trying to panic force this initiation. The fort ends up getting taken by Gale Force Esports. Throwing, kind of poking and prodding there with the flames. No jet propulsion thrown out quite yet, but the 13's not here. Fury doesn't care. He gets the initiation on a Glaurung. There's a sanctification with the Tormented Souls. Warden's Cage going to be used, but the double bunker, and that was no value at all on the Tormented Souls. There goes out the APOC. It's dodged by the Bolt. So much damage on the Cattle. Fury trying to lock it down. That's 31 gems. The Welly ends up getting the kill, but it comes at the cost of 2 kills on the side of Gale Force. A third as Rhaegar ends up dropping, make that 4. And Tempo Storm says thank you for that trade. Ends up now being able to clear these web weavers, but the gems is the biggest thing.
That was such a clutch moment for Tempo Storm. It looked dangerously close to turning against them. There was a Dragon Arrow that came in there, got a big interrupt as well. 13 did hit for Gale Force, but it wasn't enough to keep them alive. And the initial kill that they got onto B-Kid was such a huge part of that. Now, Tempo Storm, they're going to deal with this Web Weaver push. It will keep the lanes out, but Tempo Storm Dread is still sitting on a lot of gems. They're going to need one to de-push the lane just a little bit, buy them some real estate on the map, and then the second one is when they can really escalate things. Unless they get another pick or something, then all of a sudden things are definitely sped up a lot more.
But we also have to think about the fact that the 13 talent tier is here for Gale Force Esports. For instance, you know, mainly the devastating charge. That last initiation was taken pre-13, which is
right
when Diablo
before.
becomes a major threat in the percentage. I feel like it would have been a lot more profitable there for Gale Force if they had waited it out. Not saying the initiation was bad by any means. I'm just saying that I feel like that talent tier is when those type of initiations for Gale Force, though it is a silver lining for Tempo, they're also looking at this and got to be going, you know what? Like, now we're going to be that much bigger of a problem, because Fury really has been a problem on the tier, or on the Diablo, excuse me.
Oh, you talk about 13 talent tier not normally being the top one for a lot of heroes, but when it comes to the likes of Diablo, you also have Jaina with the extra cooldown reduction there at 13,
veins.
the Icy Vein. So definitely things could be available there. The unfair advantage for Lunara. That's a huge damage spike for the likes of Gale Force.
Probably one of the bigger damage spikes, especially at the 13 talent tier that kind of exists in the game with the unfair advantage, but also it's removing a defensive talent tier over an already squishy, already extremely immobile hero. Interrupt not going to land there for Fury. He comes back, positions himself to try and get the kind of backsplash interrupt. Not successful. Web Weaver phase now over to Tempo Storm. First of the game for Tempo Storm.
They've bought themselves that real estate. All the lanes are pushed out midway through, and the longer you get into this game, the stronger the Web Weavers are. So those structures do not change in terms of experience or health. So that means these Web Weavers will potentially open this map quite a bit. In Tempo Storm, they'll be looking at 16 potentially here as long as they stay alive. If they can get much more out of this, double up. This is Tempo Storm's opportunity to turn this game around.
Also, though, Gale Force Esports with the double mage composition is very good at getting rid of these Web Weavers pretty easily. Mikey Doll throw down a Blizzard, a couple Thornwood, and that's a Web Weaver already dead. That's already just like 1 to 2 autos from Big Impact, and you see that prep down to the 50% threshold. Jaina's now going to cycle towards bottom. Maiev not going to pull the trigger on the Shadow thrown down. It's going to be easy clear over mid Web Weaver phase. Jaina still not showing herself towards bottom, so Tempo Storm can commit to this. Good use of vagueness when it comes to the information here from Gale Force. If Mikey Doll commits, that is an easy Tempo Storm response, so good job here.
Tempo Storm, I believe when they get that tower down, will hit 16. They indeed do. And now all of a sudden they get the fort down, starting to open this map up. The threat of 16 is very much here now. Diablo does hit another spike here. Devastating charge at 13. Has that reset when he uses his overpower, that slam back. We'll get that second one. If we get into these tight corridors again, as you said, the initiation might be a little bit different for Tempo Storm. We'll see how quick Cattle's going to be on that sanctification.
Tempo Storm has 0 siege, so they have to pretty much initiate whenever they really want an opportunity to siege up. You saw even with that Web Weaver phase, they really only got that top fort, and that was merely because the defense of Gale Force was only contributing towards mid. That was a solo Rhaegar defense on the top half. And that's I mean, we're looking at the third Web Weaver phase of the game, so scaling-wise, that is definitely not too impressive here from Tempo Storm.
But they're getting there. I mean, the thing is they're still sitting on 106 gems, and if you don't die, you turn in, and then you pick up enough gems during the next phase, you could potentially be looking at keeps at this point. Cattle, he's taking a lot of damage. In comes the Warden's Cage. Ancestral lands just in time on a Biggie, who hops into the bunker. He's going to get out alive. Tormented Souls on that back line. Glaurung, he's getting a little bit too far deep there as he's taking fort shots. The cleanse onto him. Now Psalm looking to make plays again.
Psalm comes back in with the 3-man tether and the Divine Shield. APOC ends up getting thrown down. Now they get the rebuttal kill there onto Cattle. Passive explodes, gets the damage onto Big Impact. Now the healing trying to come out from Akaface to get the damage onto Mikey Doll. He ends up using the Ice Block. He is dead to rights when he gets out of that one. 3 for 1 in favor of Tempo Storm. But Psalm in June, mainly, I want to say, I don't know if that was June or Psalm, whoever made the call to get that reinitiation and trust in that Divine Storm, or Divine Shield, was single-handedly the reason Tempo was able to pull that back. Great play here from Tempo Storm. And now
gotta hurry.
It's a momentum swing for them.
Sonic Arrow, if they need it, will get vision, but the Scattering Arrow is just as effective. And Akaface eating so much damage. Fan trying to get the kill. They're unable to do so. And now we're looking at camps. We're looking at the turn-in. And Tempo Storm will have another turn-in at the end of this. If they don't lose any members, and they can start to force these lanes down. You look at the minimap. Top lane pushed all the way out. Mid lane now has this camp. This is an opportunity for Tempo Storm to ride this out, to get structures down, race towards 20. You get another turn-in potentially in-game. Gale Force is now on the clock, Dreadnought, to try and turn this around.
Also, one thing to keep in mind when looking at the last initiation, though, everybody was focusing on the Galarong. He was able to heal himself up with the three healing Qs onto 3 different targets. And that was multiple times, as I said. And so if that happens again, Galarong likely will be able to survive. Gale Force has to find a way to isolate, but not, fail to be able to get that lockdown and that kill. He should not be able to cycle that many of his passives. We do see the clear on the top Web Weaver and middle. Again, the lack of siege on Tempo Storm, they have to commit. They have another Web Weaver phase after this, if I have done my caster math right.
Yeah, sometimes we'll see teams, and it's very rare, you'll see them, they'll leave the bottom one to be the last to respond to. It looks like they're going to play around 20. I think this is one of those opportunities. You leave the bottom one the last to respond to. Obviously, Hanzo, a little bit of a change-up going the extra burst on his Stormbow at level 4. Not exactly the same type of race on there. So now they have enough for the turn-in. The threat of 20 is there, and you can see they're making their way out. Is Gale Force. They're going to see if they can hold on. But Tempo, they're going for keeps, not just keep at this point. They are going for Siege Giants. They are going for all of it. The fact that they're going for this boss, they're going to have to rip it fast. It will delay some of the Web Weaver push. This is an interesting call here for Gale Force.
Yeah, but Psalm has to just now start their turn-in, and he's already, they saw the 29 gems just capture the thing on the bottom, which means that they know they have this boss for free. That means that they can get an easy defense. This is actually brilliant on the side of Gale Force.
I love
Absolutely flawless. As long as they make it back in time, which they will, they're going to see pressure on the bottom half of the map, which is understandably so, considering not only does Giants siege a little bit better, but the pressure on the top half of the map, they want to get it on the opposite side. So Tempo now shows on the bottom. The 20s will be here. But Web Weavers have been easy for Gale Force to deal with. And they've already rid of one just by having the boss on the top half of the map.
They're going to clear the minions. Look for Psalm to try and charge in, get that blink off, and see if he can find an opportunity. There goes one, unable to do so. Get some damage in. Keep looking to fall. Top lane is going to be pushed out, but bottom and mid Keep are likely to fall here as the mid first to fall. Web Weaver still very healthy. See if Gale Force is forced to take this fight 18 to 20.
They might Holy Arena this, actually. A lot of damage. We see the split. Cattle goes in. Bunker got to be used. Sanctification is still available. There's the drop. Holy Arena. Ancestral Healing does land for big impact as they try and deter, but Tempo Storm is making it to the core. APOC goes down, but everybody able to dodge. There's the Divine Shield. Maiev, Fan of Knives, gets kill number 1, gets kill number 2, and Tempo Storm with that will now siege onto this core and take game number 1 over Gale Force Esports.
It was a slow start for Tempo Storm due to the likes of Gale Force coming out strong, but it's one of those things to where you always wonder if you don't try and snowball hard enough, so to speak, then all of a sudden it's like, were those early Web Weavers worth it? Because all of a sudden Tempo, they start rolling, and you question that fight that Gale Force took in that mid lane over near the Knights of Tempo Storm. They were just shy of 13. They had Web Weavers that were going to be descending, but they picked up the pace. They were like, look, we're fighting under our Knights. Let's force it. That's when things started to spiral out of control for Gale Force.
I will say, though, I would much rather that version of spiral out of control, that proactive trying to initiate, it was slightly suboptimal, and then, momentum kind of falling against you, than the other way around. Number one, it's easier to improve off of, and number two is if you're making the plays